welcome everyone. Welcome to another Astral interview. And I have the honor here with me to have Alan Steinfeld, leader in consciousness evolution with 30 years of exploring consciousness as a lecturer on the speaking circuit, host and producer of the long-running primetime TV series New Realities. What have you interviewed? Over 5,000 people now, including Deepak, John Gray, John Anthony West, maybe Ramdas. Richard
Yes.
Dolan. Did you interview Richard Dolan?
Yes, many times. Yes,
Yes,
Richard's a good friend.
And Nassim Haramein. And what, 12 million views on YouTube?
Well, more than that now. I think it's like 20 million views. Because
20 million views on YouTube.
I started when YouTube first came out in 2006. I was one of the first creators on there.
Absolutely. And you have an up-and-coming book too, Making Contact.
Yes, it's a collection of essays by our favorite UFO researchers. Not Richard Dolan, because he was too busy to contribute, but Linda Moulton Howe, Grant Cameron, Whitley Strieber.
Wow.
Do you know who John Mack is?
Yes,
I got in touch with his estate, and there was an unpublished essay that they let me put in this book for the first time in publication. So,
oh my God, so exciting.
Yes, so and that, yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Tell me, before you go into all the exciting stuff about your book, tell us a little bit about your life. Tell us about things that nobody knows about your life.
That's a good question. Let me wait 1 second. Let me just grab something. Okay, you can cut that part out, right? Right.
Okay.
No, I just want to say one more thing about the book is that Daryl Anka has a piece in there as himself, but not as Bashar, as Daryl Anka.
Oh, awesome. Amazing.
So, but your question, okay, what can I tell you that I haven't told? Well, I may have told other people this, but I've never felt like I was from this planet. I never felt like a part of my family. Very nice people, very kind, but very, very earth-based, very, I'm very, successful in that realm of business. My father was probably the most inspirational person for me to reach out and do everything I've done, because he grew up in the Depression. He was poor, had to work every single day. I mean, he wanted to never be poor again. So from 16 until the time he could no longer work, because he sort of worked himself to death, he was in business. But after he had made it to a certain level, a house in the suburbs, kids, cars, pool, whatever, it was very middle class, after he had made it, he started to search for what else. That was not satisfying.
Right.
So I witnessed what he went through, and I said, well, that saves me a lot of trouble, because I don't need the house in the suburbs with the car and all that. I've already done that one in some level. So, I mean, the searching for the mystery and the mystical elements of existence, well, I think that's the most exciting thing here. That's why I'm drawn to people like David Sarita and all the UFO people, and Ramdas and all the, Ramdas had to drop out of Harvard and take LSD. Well, I just had to realize that there was more to me than
what's around you and what surrounds you.
Yeah, and that the American dream was a kind of a joke, because it didn't really get you satisfaction. It just made you buy into the system. It just made you a part of a corporate commercial society. So that was what turned me on to looking for something more. And you know what? When you look for something more, you find it.
You find it everywhere.
Yes. Of course, my mother was very materialistic, still is. She
Yeah.
said, "What are you looking at?" She would always get angry with my father, actually. And that's something I've never told anyone because she was always saying, "What are you looking for? You got it made. You've done everything." And and she liked the material existence on
Right.
whatever level. It wasn't like, huge, but it was enough for, you know, people coming from immigrant parents from Europe, from Poland, Russia, settling with here with nothing. And now, wow, you got your own house, got your own couple of cars, it's like that's sort of
What,
like
right. What more do you want now that you have
what
all this around you, right?
yeah, right. What more do you really need, even,
Right. And so, but
So
you saw
yeah.
what he really needed, right? You were able to see through what it was that he was searching for because you kind of felt it inside yourself as well.
Well, I felt it because I said, well, here's my house in the suburb. Here is this. Do I want to do that when I grow up? I've just done that. I've just
Right.
been part of that experience. Why? I mean, of course, my brothers had a different experience and they wanted that. And, I have two younger brothers, and
Right.
so I always did feel that I was different, but my father did start searching, and it gave me permission to not follow a conventional life. It's
Right.
like, I've been living here in the East Village, and, you know, felt like I was part of the early settlements here when the city started to change in the 80s. So it was a little depressed in the 60s, 70s, and then things started to happen, although now it's depressed again. But for when I started to come into the art scene here, I was more interested in the arts than metaphysics, because
Oh, wow.
that was also a creative way of expressing something deeper. What do the arts have to do? And so I started my
Well, talk about the artistic side then,
yes, I should show you my early photographs, which got me into this idea of new realities, 'cause
please.
it
Send
came
them to me.
through in my photographs. I always thought there was that saying, you two things cannot occupy the same place at the
At
same
the same
time.
time.
But I thought, well, what if they could? What if two things could occupy the same place at the same time? So I would take pictures and double expose it. And there were two things in the same frame, same place at the same time, or sometimes three things, four things. So this whole idea of new realities that I've been pursuing, talking to people, started with the visuals that, oh, here's these intersecting realities that
Right.
make a third reality. It's not like you just have two, you make something that has never existed before. And that was kind of
Right.
magic for me.
Well, to
So,
quote you, a mind stretched to new realities never returns to its
original
original
demand.
dimension.
Yeah.
So, what exactly does that mean to you?
Well, it means once you see something, you cannot unsee it. Once you experience a kind of multi-dimensional awareness, or being just simple, being lucid in your dreams, when you start to realize that those realities actually exist, you can't go back to the small box. You can't say, oh, it's not real, because you've experienced, the difference between knowledge and experience is that experience is innate wisdom. You can't argue it. You can argue with facts and knowledge, but you can't argue with experience unless
No,
someone comes
that's
along and
right.
said, no, that didn't happen to you. But I trust people's experiences. So once you've seen a UFO, once you've been abducted, which I write about in my book,
Yeah,
you can't go back to a small thing and say, no, the world is only this little
right,
box.
right.
Terence McKenna used to say the culture is not your friend because it limits us. You know, I say this is a table, that's a chair, this is a ceiling, and those are boxes that we frame our
We
reality
are-
in.
Yeah.
But if we do that, then we live in our predictable world of categories, right?
Well, we know that the box, the chair, and the table aren't really what they appear to be, anyways.
Well, you know that, but most people don't even think about that. They
right.
don't even question that. They don't even like, it's like,
Yeah,
okay, that's
yeah.
the conditioning of us when we're children in whatever culture you're in to just go by the cultural values. So it's not just the labels of things, it's the values
Value
that
of, yeah, that
come
place.
with those things, those
Right.
labelings. It's like certain ways of relating. And that's why, you know, prejudice, there's no babies are born with prejudice, that's a taught expression by the culture or whatever ignorance people have picked up from their families or their religions or their political affiliations or their media. This is where my hope is, and my feeling is that we're born pretty pure, and we're
Well, every religious, quote unquote, religious book states that you're born masum, which is innocent or pure or
yeah.
right. Every
They
pretty
they
much.
state that, but they don't teach that. I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
mean,
Here,
most religions say that if you're this, you're better than other people,
right.
and that's why everyone's favorite song is Imagine No
Yeah,
Religion.
no religion. Yeah.
Right. So I knew that. I mean, I was brought up Jewish. My father was actually Orthodox, but he
Okay.
became a Buddhist. He started meditating once he started to search around. And so
So,
the
how
diff
old were you when you first started your search? When you
mm,
actually
mm,
delved into this idea of the consciousness?
yeah, that's a really good question. Now I haven't told anyone this either, but Um, I think it started, I was brought up on white bread and milk and television and Yankee Doodles. You know what those are, like little cupcakes and
Right.
sugar, Coca-Cola and pizza. And pizza and Coca-Cola is a great combination. I I haven't had that in 30 years because it,
Oh,
it
God.
doesn't make me feel good, but
It doesn't make us feel good anymore. I know.
it doesn't make it was, but that was the American culture in the suburbs, and then I think it was like seventh grade. It's like, um, oh yeah, I saw an article in the Village Voice that presented this was like, I guess, in the 70s. The Village Voice was an alternative paper, and it's like, and I just read something. I said, wow, there's actually another way of looking at the news. I mean, that was like, really, there was this, like, you watch Walter Cronkite, whatever the news is, and that's the way it is. I think he would end every broadcast that way. I was a
And that's
little
the
young, but I
way
do remember some of that. That's the way it is. So if Walter Cronkite says that's the way it is, that must be the, the way it
the way
is.
it is.
And so you watch, I only had three stations basically: ABC, NBC, CBS, and everything was pretty much the same. And that's what you believe because the media was telling us that's the way it is. But then I read this article in the Village Voice, and it's like, well, maybe I think it was an anti-Vietnam War thing because that was still going on. It's like, wow. I mean, this war is not what they're telling us. And well, the big
Well, I mean,
awakening.
think about today where you have the submitters and you have the rebellers and these
Right.
different mindsets that are happening right now even.
Right, but there was no, opportunity to have a different mindset back then.
Right.
But, I think it actually started earlier. In 2nd grade, 1963, I'm giving away how old I was, but, that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
The teacher comes in the room, I think it was November 21st, saying the president has been assassinated.
Oh my
It's
God.
like, I didn't know what that word meant, assassinated. I thought, and I said, "What is that?" "Well, he's been killed," someone said. I said, "Really? Why would someone kill the president?" Because,
Right.
but and then that word assassinated always stuck out in my mind. Well, he wasn't just killed or shot, he was assassinated. That's different. I started to think about, I mean, that stayed with me because it was a trauma.
Right.
It was like 9/11. It was like a
Right.
world trauma. It's like,
It's a world trauma. Right.
yeah, it was like a world global trauma and more here. And, Actually, I remember even watching the Nixon Kennedy debates, and I think that was 1960. I must have been like 3 years old. And my parents said, who do you like? And I immediately was drawn to Kennedy. He just
Kennedy.
looked nicer. So I had some identification. Then I guess I was like 8 years old in second grade, and there's the president was assassinated. So does that mean he was just shot, or does it mean that there was some political
Right.
conspiracy? I'm not much of a conspiracy person, but yes,
No.
you have to admit that the Kennedy JFK assassination was sort of that
Yeah. Controversial.
first,
Let's say controversial.
well, controversial, but the first like step into what is now like a full-fledged occupation for half the country, conspiracy theories. But
Yeah.
that was the beginning. That really was like because
For
assassin.
someone in grade two, though, how did they latch on to the
Well, it
assassination?
was just that word I had never heard before, assassination. I mean, I
Right.
just never heard it before. I mean, like you don't really, if it's not in the news and no one had been really assassinated in the country probably since whenever, McKinley, maybe that was 1899. But so I latched onto that word and it kept thinking. And then, I started to look at that. I read The Village Voice in seventh grade. I picked up National Lampoon, also around high
Right.
school, junior high school. National Lampoon was another satire or
Right.
making fun of the establishment.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
And then I used to listen to the radio at night because I couldn't fall asleep. I think I would have like ET invasion nightmares or something like that, but I couldn't fall asleep. I would listen to Long John Nebel, who was like really the Art Bell and George
That's
Norrie of the 1960s. And he would have these way out guests about astral travel and people on different planets. And it was late night radio. And that started to make me aware of other realities and the fact that people didn't all think the same. You grow up in suburbia and everyone thinks the same. They dress the same. They talk about the same things. It was good, at least in the town I was living in, that it wasn't all just, um, young kids of one type. It were kind of mixed with other people. I mean, other groups there. I mean, there was the Jewish, there was the Italian, there was the Irish, there was the WASP, and so it wasn't just it was mixed together in a
right.
nice way where we could. So it wasn't just like all
Other.
one type.
Right. Right.
So
So
that was an open. Of course, you never met a person from India back then, or there were no Black people in my school or Asians either of any sort. So it was a
wow.
very white bread Long Island, but it wasn't racist or prejudice. It just it
It
just
just happened to
wasn't
be a
there.
town where it wasn't there. Yeah. I
Yeah,
hear.
but my family
So,
was liberal and open and positive. So anyway, yes. So what
so
are you gonna
talking about this radio show you were listening to and these other realities that you were
right?
introduced to through this communication that you were attracted to.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
was there one that you attached yourself to? Was there one specific mystical reality that you
Well,
were
it wasn't mystical back then. It was more
curiosity?
yeah, curiosity that something else was going on. I
Right.
wasn't open to I mean, I didn't know about mystical realities till
Just yet, yeah.
I don't know when I started
Latch on to
to
that.
yeah. I mean, when did that happen? The mystical part. I think when I got to college and started to explore consciousness. And when did I start? Oh, I did see a channel in 1981. First time
Okay.
I've ever saw someone
Oh wow.
channel. Uh,
So that was your first experience with mysticism or metaphysics then, and that's
yes, because in college I had studied psychology.
so
So
did you like I don't know, have any dream or any kind of experience as you were growing up or as you were
Yes,
young?
thank you for asking that. Yes, that's a good question. Um, I used to feel like when I was like 14 or something, like I was being pulled out of my body, like
Wow.
by the back of my neck. It's like I would be felt like I was frozen and
Yeah,
couldn't move, but there was this like vibration taking over my body, and
right,
I knew it wasn't a dream,
right.
and it was really disturbing and scary.
Okay.
And I had this like red sort of blinds on the window, and the room would sort of turn red, and I felt like I was in an altered state. So, I would struggle with that, or wake up and feel like I was out of my body or couldn't move, and I'd have to do something in my mind to get back in my
To break.
body.
Yeah,
But in the morning, I woke up and everything was fine. So it's
right,
like, mm, but those things, and then later I researched some of that may have been ET contact, or some of that
right.
may have been,
Sleep paralysis.
well, sleep paralysis. I don't, there is no sleep. Sleep paralysis means you're not really in your body. It's like
Right.
you
So
think
you're
you're in your
not,
body, but you can't move because you're not in your body.
I've had that experience
Well,
a few.
that's because you've had out of body.
Okay, so you were telling me about your experience and that
Yeah.
it
So
almost
then
sounds ET or it almost sounds abduction even for that matter.
it could have been an abduction. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right.
I write about this in my book. Did you order my book yet?
I haven't ordered your
You
book
know,
yet, but I intend to as soon as we get off the show here.
no, no, wait, because someone told me if everyone orders the book on the same day, it can be a bestseller if we get enough people.
Absolutely, that's true.
So
Can you
wait to
tell me
order it.
when? Can you tell me
I
when?
will, I will tell you one. But
Okay.
anyway, so I had those early experiences when I was growing up, like maybe 13, 14. And then I studied psychology in college because I wanted to learn more about the human mind. But someone had told me after college, I was living in New York, and they said this woman channels this warrior from Atlantis, this 35,000-year-old warrior. I said, well, who is this woman? And they said,
Right.
well, she's a housewife from Washington State. I said, that's really ridiculous. I don't believe that. It's like,
Housewife Housewife channels a warrior. Yes, okay.
right. It's like, it didn't make sense to a
Yeah.
psychological perspective. So I
Uh,
was not interested in that for like 2 years. And then, this is like, I mean, I could have been one of the first to see it. So this is like 1979. Someone tells me about this woman, Jay-Z Knight. Have you heard of Ramtha?
yeah, absolutely.
So it was like she was just starting to do
Yeah.
channeling in 1979, but it wasn't until 1981.
I tried her meditation
Oh,
with the
it's great. That actually changed my awareness more than anything I ever did once I got into Ramtha. But I didn't
wow.
get into him right away. I had to think about it for 2 years. And then someone had left these audio tapes in my apartment from my roommate, who I had here in New York. Um, and on the tapes, Ramtha was answering questions. And
Mhm.
there was this one question by a woman who said, asking Ramtha about her health, and she had this really bad skin, with
Right,
acne, I guess. And she said she had tried everything to actually heal that. And she said
right.
nothing worked. And then Ramtha says to her, well, have you tried loving it? And it's like, there was a moment you could hear it on the audio, and
Yeah, it's
that's
like,
like, wow,
what?
that just stopped her. And it stopped me,
Yeah,
and I said, well, maybe this other way of understanding is really about loving something that we can't deal with or something. So
right,
I
right,
went to see then this channel. She was coming to New York. She would tour the country. She'd go to like Southern California, Northern California, and then New
What
York,
was
and Jay-Z Night. Jay-Z Night would
okay, yes, yes, JC Knight, right.
she would
So
travel
it was
around.
So it was JC Knight that this housewife.
Yes, Jay-Z
Okay,
Knight
okay,
was the housewife.
okay,
No,
okay,
no, Jay-Z Knight. And then I
okay,
said, okay, well, if it's about loving it, and I'll go check it out, because a lot of my friends were going. I had this friend who was a dwarf,
right.
from college. I knew him, Bobby Faust, great guy. He's no longer with us, but he would say, he asked Ramtha a question, which
Right.
Jay-Z Night with Channel Ramtha. He
Yeah.
said to her, why am I a dwarf this lifetime? And Ramtha said to him, because you were a giant in a past lifetime and you wanted to see the world from another perspective. So anyway, all my friends were going that I knew, because it was kind of like, now channeling is like an everyday kind of household word. But in the early 80s, like, there was only Seth, Jane Roberts.
You're
That was like,
right.
and that was great stuff too. If you ever read, did you ever read Seth?
I've read 2 of her books. Yeah.
That's great. Here,
Yeah.
this is one of my favorite, The Unknown Reality. Oh, you can't see it, but it's The
No, I
Unknown.
can. No, I can.
Okay,
Yeah.
The Unknown
I've read
Reality.
that.
That is great. The nature of personal reality. But anyway, I went to see Ramtha in 1981, and there's an audience, probably maybe 100 people in this auditorium on Central Park West. And, I'm not quite bored, but I'm just like, there's
Yeah.
all this, people are asking about how to like heal their sick parakeet. I mean, ridiculous questions. And then Ramtha points towards me and he says to me, "What say you, beloved entity? How be you this day in your time?" And it's like,
Wow.
what are you talking? It's like, what does that mean? You're talking to me. I looked around, there was no one behind me. I guess he was talking to me.
Right.
But in that moment of that connection, it was like reality became distorted. It became like I
Something
was
else.
in an altered state in
Right.
that connection. It felt like there was like this embrace of our energies in the middle of the room
Right.
there. It's like in a
Everything else around you stopped and it was just
yes. It was like this moment. It's like, you ever see like the sound drops away and just like,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
that was like, oh, it's like in that moment, I knew I was greater than my body. There was more to me. That was like some people have that on LSD or whatever they do, but that was my moment where
Right.
the search began,
Wow.
where I entered the metaphysical arena,
So then all these other realities we talked about that you heard on that radio show, you named your show The New Realities.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we're going to come back to that question because I want you to make that distinction for me.
Mhm.
But in your experience with Ramtha, that whatever opened up for you,
Mhm.
tell me now, where did that lead you? Like, how do we go from somebody
Uh,
who's just exploring consciousness in their individual experience to somebody who wants to tell the world about it?
right. It led me everywhere, that experience. I from then, I would just do freelance jobs. I would take the next workshop, I'd take the next chakra thing. I learned about, energies, because I
Right.
realized I was really just energy. I even went to acupuncture school for
That's
4
right. You
years.
become an
Yeah,
acupuncturist.
just to study the energy pathway. So I became obsessed with energy. It wasn't so much UFOs at that time. So I just wanted to know more. I wanted to know, well, that was an altered state of consciousness. I really didn't do like drugs to experiment. I mean, I didn't really like marijuana. I didn't really do, I mean, I did do ecstasy occasionally. That was nice. That was a hard opening. I did do an awful experience, ketamine. That was a horrible thing with John Lilly. That was the worst experience I've ever done.
And
Uh,
what advice do you have for anyone
I
who
would,
wants
my
to?
advice is that you don't need
You
drugs.
don't
Even
need it.
ayahuasca
Right.
is sort of a joke. We already, you see, I think in the 60s, maybe those things expanded consciousness, but we as a collective are already opening those parts of our brain to
Right.
access these new realities. So those things actually take us down.
Yeah.
They lower our vibration.
Right.
My feeling is that we are in a much higher vibration now than we were 20 years ago or 30 years or 100 years ago. It keeps getting refined. We don't see
Well,
it
we're
because we're
not
living days.
necessarily in a higher vibration. It's just we're being able to perceive that higher vibration because we're absolutely always in that higher vibration.
But I do think there's a physical higher vibration, like an
I,
acceleration within the body. We're getting closer to light, the ascension, whatever you want to call that.
right.
So I started. So after that meeting with Ramtha 81, it's like, oh, I was just going to explore all the spiritual possibilities that I no longer doubted because I had an experience that showed me they were real. I mean, Ram Dass talks about that in Be Here Now when he took the LSD. All the mystical books started to make sense. Well, I didn't need to take the LSD. It's like
Right.
all started to make sense because, like, I'm sure you've had an experience that got you into this, right?
Yeah.
I'll interview you
Absolutely.
sometime and
You,
we'll do that.
sure, we can
But
do that.
because I'm interested in what is that moment where it's like losing your virginity. It's like, what is that moment where
Yeah.
you um
I believe every
go,
I believe everyone has that experience, that
well, not
moment.
everyone. I
That-
think there's a lot of people I know who haven't had it, but the
Well,
people we know, yes.
yes, that's true.
I
Um,
mean,
or
I
they
mean, I
didn't
think the most of the world,
recognize it, or they
what's
didn't
that?
recognize it, or they didn't recognize it when they,
Right, right, right. They didn't reckon, but I don't think they actually even have had it because I think, I mean, there's a lot of very dense people,
it's
like my
true.
brothers. I don't think had that. I don't think like um, I don't
I
think
hear you because I feel the same way about my brother and sister.
right. So they haven't not I and it's a vibrational thing.
Yeah,
Meeting Ramtha in 1981 shifted my vibration because I was ready for that. I mean, somebody else may have had the same experience and it's like, oh, that was interesting. But for me, actually, before I met Ramtha, I was kind of looking at different spiritual traditions. I was looking at gurus and
mhm.
Osho. And it's like, I didn't really want to dress in orange. That was not a good color for me. I didn't want to wear someone's picture around my neck. So I wasn't into worshiping somebody in the Eastern Indian tradition. No,
Right.
nothing personal, but
No,
I
no.
just didn't. No, or and in the Western tradition, it's like you had to follow this unseen being
Right,
who sat in judgment,
right,
or that's the Judaic, or like this bloody person on a
right.
cross. You had to worship some bleeding person on a cross. That didn't make any sense to me. Although I think Jesus is a great teacher once you really
Absolutely.
learn the true story about it. But so anyway, I wanted something unseen. And that was the one thing Ramtha said in the talk that I went to. He said, everybody wants to know what channeling is. Everybody wants to like be a part of this phenomenon. But the real question is, who's coming through that body?
Right.
Where's that energy?
Where is that?
Mhm.
What is that?
What
Let
are
alone
you?
where and what are
Mhm.
you? Right.
So he
Absolutely.
turned the question around instead of like being fascinated with the channel, be fascinated with the source of your own energy.
Right.
And
Well,
that made
I,
a
I
lot of
was in
sense.
a I was in a channeling session once where the person channeling, the voice channeling out of them said, "You bow down, you bow down, you bow down." There was like 5 or 6 of us in the room, and I refused to bow down, and it yelled
Mhm.
at me, bow down. Just ran out of that
Right. That's the big
so
problem. Just because
fast.
someone's channeling doesn't mean they're enlightened. It means they're
Exactly.
like just not physical. And people think, oh, but it's you have to really beware. I mean, I feel like I was lucky because Ramtha, he felt like an ascended being. He said he was, but this expanded consciousness and the wisdom. I mean, he never said he said, no, you are God. I
Absolutely. Yeah.
like that.
Different.
And one thing, and what's that?
That's a different channel or a different entity coming out of Ramtha than the one I experienced, for example, right?
I don't
It-
know who did you, yeah, right. Then the being you
Than
experienced.
the
Right, right,
being I
right.
experienced.
Right, right, right. Definitely. Well, there's an infinite amount of unseen beings, and they're not all woke, as they say these days.
I
There's
mean,
a
like Bashar or Esther Hicks, and we're talking about some very sophisticated channeling coming out of them, right? I mean,
Yes, yes. Although I think, I mean, I like Bashar, of course, because he's brilliant. But I mean, Esther Hicks is very. I mean, she's okay for beginners. It's just my judgment, but it's very. I mean, the law of attraction is great and it works, but it only gets you what you know.
right.
You know,
Yeah.
if you focus on what you want, but what Ramtha was saying was, we're here to make known the unknown.
Right.
That's like one of his like basic principles. The reason you incarnated was not to have a house and all get all those things, and that's actually in the way, or that's not why you incarnated, to have
Right.
a lot of stuff. It's not about the law of attraction. It's about being a creative being. And with your creativity, you bring something new into the plane of existence and adds to the wisdom and the joy of the world. That's why you incarnated. That's what
Absolutely.
you're doing with this program. So
Absolutely.
you're here to own the human experience. This is Ramtha. And in the owning of it, you take it to another level. You're here to look at everyone and you say, when you look everyone and say, I know what that is. I know what that feels like. So, and I would practice that like on the subways, looking into people's eyes and say,
Right.
oh yeah. And do you see God in that person? Do you see the light in that person? And even the most awful person, there is a God force coming
Absolutely.
through there. Or, so that was a practice. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I mean, so we're here to own the human experience, which means we're here to have all the feelings that human beings are capable of feeling. That's my philosophy. And we're here to create, we're here to be creators as we
We-
emulate creation. So
Yeah.
making known the unknown is what New Realities is about, if you want to get back to that, because it's
Yep.
like, that is the basis. I want to bring new possibilities because I want to know them. I'm just
Right.
showing myself what,
I mean,
what
the ET experience, for example, the contact experience, going to
Mhm.
your book now, Making Contact,
Yes.
as we come to our close, making contact, for example, that wasn't as predominant as it is right now. And
Right.
right,
Yes, you're
what
absolutely right.
like
Yes.
there's this period where there was near death experiences, for example, was a
that
big
was the
thing, and
that was this
astral experiences was a big thing, and now all of a sudden we have this
right.
ET experience as
That's
a
right. You're right. That was the soup du jour of the day. And now we have
right,
something else.
yeah,
So that's it. So making contact is sort of on everyone's mind because, and they make this clear in the book, and I'll send you a PDF for the book, okay?
please, yeah, I'd love
But
to.
still buy it.
I'll review it for you too.
Yes, but still buy it too, if you don't mind.
I
But
will.
it's making contact is actually a two-way street. Everyone is waiting for them to show up, but we have to shift how we're thinking if we're going to be open to making contact. So it's like we have to reach out, and as they reach towards us, we meet. That's the making of contact. It's two
So
ways.
So what's your thought of the CE5 then, where Stephen Greer is approaching it, where we are the initiators of making contact versus waiting for contact?
Well, they're there. They're waiting for us to reach up. So they are waiting. We're not initiating it in the sense that Greer thinks about it. They're already here. We're just
Yeah,
tuning our frequency to see them, but they still have to do their part, which is show up.
right.
So they're here and they're changing people's consciousness by planting new possibilities in people's minds. Did you hear that interview with Anjali, the one Roderick brought on?
I sure did. That was
Isn't
like
that's mind blowing, isn't it?
it felt like she's experienced every single phenomena you could possibly think of in
Mm,
that sense, right? Whether it was near death, whether it was channeling, whether it was ET
yes,
experience, whether
yes. But she has a
astral.
real message for us. She is going to be part of this next wave, I feel. And they're here. They singled her out to make contact. So it's Stephen Greer, you know, he does his part. And I did a C5 with him and I did see things, but when you shift your mind, when you drop out of the beta waves and more into alpha and data and theta, that creates a doorway for other beings, other dimensions to
Right,
show up without fear, without fear. A lot
right.
of people have these experiences spontaneously, and
Yeah,
I did too when I was
yeah,
abducted.
same.
You
Yes.
were abducted?
I don't know if it was an abduction, but when you say that there's no such real thing as sleep paralysis, maybe it was an abduction because certainly it
Well, I think it's a
was,
joke. People call it sleep paralysis. You're just not in your body. Come on.
yeah.
But scientists are not ready to admit that sort of
But I did have an
possibility.
experience that was showing me where I felt like I was in my body and out of my body at the same time, if that makes sense to you.
Totally makes sense because that happened to me, because you may be out of your body, but your consciousness is still, I don't believe in a silver cord, but somehow connected to the body.
Yeah,
So when I was out of my body, I was able to um, feel my body breathing and all that. So I was
right.
able to be, actually, Carlos Castaneda talks about it being here and there at the same time.
Yeah,
Did you ever read Carlos Castaneda?
I did. Absolutely. I
Did you
did.
read
Quite
all
a
his
long while
books?
ago when I was 20. I don't have all his books, but I did read
Oh,
his main
that
one.
was a huge influence on me. So I think the three major influences for
I
me,
listened to his audio books.
right?
I
The
had all these
three
cassettes.
three major influences for me was Carlos Castaneda. I took one summer and
Right.
read every
Crazy.
single book in order. And it's like one long story.
Yeah.
It's not like the ending of a book, like one book
Yeah.
leads into the next. So I think he has
Yeah.
8 books out: Teachings Don Juan, Separate Reality, Journey to Ixtlan, Tales of Power,
Tales of
all
Power.
this. And it's an incredible story.
Yeah.
And he just didn't have enough impeccability to make the definitive journey.
And so when I read that, I felt positive about almost everything. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, it
Then
is
when,
possible.
but then when I read something like Robert Monroe, it felt like this darkness comes in when I read Robert
Really? Is
Monroe.
that, I never read that. I never heard that. And Robert Monroe, is there that?
Well, it's just that, like, for example, you have to protect yourself, and in that sense, right? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean, but I think if you have to protect yourself, then you're attracting what it is you're protecting yourself from.
exactly, exactly.
And
And
yeah, I don't,
until I read that in Robert Monroe, I didn't feel I needed to protect
well,
myself.
you don't. If you don't feel you do, then I mean, there are some weird astral entities out there, but
Right. I mean,
I
I've had outstanding experiences, but I haven't really had any negative experiences per
yeah,
se.
because you're already at a different vibration. You're already there. So
Right,
I wouldn't worry about it.
right,
I mean,
right.
you're good. You're good to go. Really. But
Tell everyone about your book now, because
mm,
and we gotta do this again because I have a
no,
million.
let's do a part 2 more. But I really appreciate the early childhood questions because it gives me perspective because but my book, so after the Ramtha stuff, I did have some UFO, I did have a UFO experience, abduction experience, or real abduction, not just like
Wow.
it's in 1987,
So
the
tell us
year of
about
the,
that before you go. Just
well,
quick.
I was driving cross country with this girlfriend. We stopped by this road and in the night we felt like we were frozen, like we were just like,
And you
it's not like
both
we were sleep paralysis. We woke up in the same position we went to sleep in. Then
right,
that never happened. You don't even remember something like that.
right,
It's like, and in my book, I write about this, so you can read that. But it was like a time mold was made of us. We were taken out of the present time and brought into this other reality, and then put right back into this mold, like that was made of our imprint on time. Is the only way I could describe that. And
wow,
it took me, and I heard what's his name, Bob Lazar talk
wow,
about this, that they were able to do this, freeze time. And it happened after I had my experience, or he said this.
Well,
So
the
anyway,
Philadelphia experiment also talks about that, the
yeah, I don't
montage.
know about the Philadelphia. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of talk about it. I'm not sure what to believe about that though, but yeah,
I too, I don't know what to believe
yeah.
about
But
it, but they
anyway,
talk about
in that
this.
abduction experience, it took me 20 years to integrate that whole thing. I'm still integrating that. But after that, I said, what happened to me? And I met Bud Hopkins and John Mack, Whitley Strieber, really the big names. And it's like I sort of became obsessed with the UFO ET experience. So I would go to all the conferences and, just hang out with Linda
Yeah,
Moulton
you
Howe
have
till two.
friend David Sarita at that time, probably.
I probably met David then, and lots of people. I hang out with Grant Cameron and Whitley, go out. I mean, these are the all-stars of our team. They've been Travis Walton. A bunch of us were on a UFO cruise together with Travis, and they're regular people, but I found the whole UFO group very intelligent, very open-minded for the most part, most of them, and looking to this other level of reality. So I became sort of good friends with a lot of these people. And so I asked them when I went I'm writing another book about a very, well, unknown abduction that happened in the 1800s.
Oh, wow.
But I went to this publisher. I said, well, I have this book about this great abduction. And he goes, well, we're not ready for that. Why don't you write an anthology? Why don't you write a collection? Why don't you collect the best people in this field, put them together in one volume, and we'll put it out there as your book, as the editor, and contribute a piece. So I did that. I got Linda and Darryl Anka and Whitley Strieber and Nick Pope and Mary Rodwell, and like
Wow.
really the people
Yeah, the ones.
people I've actually had also personal connection with. It's like
Right.
I was even John Mack, who I knew. I mean, he's no longer with us, but
Well,
I
well,
knew the people
you
taking
spoke
care
to
of his.
their estate, right?
Yeah, I spoke to his archivist actually, who I also knew because I had sent John things and I did an interview with John way back. So I knew them. And so I put them all together in a book that starts with with the nuts and bolts, as they say. So what does the government know? And what are UFOs? What do they think? And then I go more and more into consciousness until I get to like the abduction part and then the integration part, like with Daryl and Mary and Carolyn Corey. I finished it with Carolyn Corey, who actually talks about merging with these ETs.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I
I'm
run.
excited.
Thank you. Yeah, because it's like it runs the course of the whole phenomena as we know it
Right.
with this like it's like a deepening of levels of interest of awareness about the phenomena. So
Right.
you start with the exterior, oh yeah, there's something up in the sky, and then it goes way into like
Right.
consciousness. So
Right.
that's what makes this book, Making Contact, different than all the thousands and tens of thousands of UFO books already out there.
Right.
There's
Right.
something, it's a
Because you did the
narrative.
gamut.
Yes, yes, there's a yes, exactly. I'm glad you get that. Yes.
Absolutely.
No, let's do a part two where we can talk about
I'd love to. We could dig
all
deeper
right,
into many things.
yes, yes, definitely. Thank you. I mean, is there anything else you want to know just
No, is
before?
there anything last minute that you want to say
Well,
before you
buy the
go?
book on Amazon, right? You can put the Amazon link there
Yeah, I will put.
and
Sorry.
tell your friends to buy. Actually, that my publicist says tell people to buy 3 copies. One for yourself, one for your family to show them that you're not crazy, and one for those
One to
friends
gift,
that what
and one to gift to someone.
yes, one to gift to someone who doesn't believe any of this stuff or to
Exactly.
who do because it I think actually I only wrote one part of it, but it's really I enjoyed reading the essays. It's like, wow, it's almost like there's an invisible story being told here.
Well, you must have had, like, as you're writing this corpus of
Yeah.
experiences, you probably went through a shift in consciousness as you were writing it.
Well, I went through a shift in writing my own story, like from childhood, my obsession. I didn't
Yeah.
even tell you that part with. And so I wrote about stuff I had never actually talked to anyone about
Right.
because I don't know, I just had
And I
time to.
got the feeling to ask you questions about things you never told anyone about. So must be
Yeah,
connected there.
it is connected to that. Thank you for following your intuition. I-
Absolutely. I'd love to, I'd
Thank
love to
you.
host you. Thank you.
I really enjoyed talking to you. So
I
I
enjoyed
appreciate.
talking to you. I love you, Alan. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I
Thank you.
bless.
Oh.
Thanks. Okay. Bye.